again. My name is Bill Mew, and I'm joined by
Hi, I'm Des Blanchfield.
Des. Great to have you here again. Hopefully we're going to be covering a whole set of news stories. There's been quite a lot of interest in the last week, and looking here at some of the stories that we're focusing here on at Elnion, we've got a whole set of stories. I'd like to start first of all with one which I thought was particularly pertinent. You did an article very recently on AI hallucination. Tell me a little bit about what the main principle was here.
Yes, indeed. So this is a topic that keeps coming up in boardrooms, and I decided that after holding on to this topic for a while, I would simply just share my thoughts and insights on it. Mostly because I think there's a substantial risk in this, and there could even potentially be a risk of, loss of life if some of these systems are used in medical or guidance systems or car control systems. So the overall topic is just the concept of a coinage that's come up recently from media, which is AI hallucination, which in effect means just making stuff up, or more sensitively, making mistakes or errors. So this is where artificial intelligence systems, particularly generative AIs, transformers that are used to take information that's been captured predominantly from crawling the internet and used to train models. When you ask it to do something like write an article or a blog or a legal brief or even produce a data set, it makes errors. It makes things up, things that don't exist. And there's been scenarios where a lawyer in North America was essentially held to account by a judge who said this is just completely non-factual and nonsense, and he lost the case because he was using a GPT to produce these briefs, and it just made stuff up. It just lied. So the story is really just my take on the overall issues around the issue of what we're now coining as a term of AI hallucination, which is essentially trying to unravel this weird and dangerous phenomenon that's impacting artificial intelligence. And without giving away too much, a topic that you and I have talked about previously, which is essentially this Ouroboros effect, a serpent or a snake eating its own tail. I delve into the issue not only of AI hallucination, but also the risk that we now have of this hallucination effect and phenomenon being driven by AI consuming its own content that it's used to produce. So I would love to get people's feedback on that. We'd love comments on social media. But yeah, that's a hot topic that I think is going to need to be discussed in boardrooms around the world very, very soon.
I agree entirely. And obviously, the first LLM models that started to scrape stuff over the internet, I mean, the internet as a whole is not necessarily the greatest place for gathering information, because there's plenty of information out there that even without AI hallucination leaves some accuracy to be desired. But as subsequent rounds of data scraping happen, we're not going just from internet-derived data. We're starting to see some of the LLMs publishing their own information, which is providing a feedback loop. And my concern here is that this is going to simply amplify with the feedback loop, and we're going to see a lot more concern. And I touched on it in an article that I did when I touched on the fact that AI isn't magic, and I set to set out a few expectations here in the article, and I would encourage people to go and have a look. I talk a little bit, firstly, about the fact that there are some outrageous expectations here. People see a lot of technology as magic, and I think there was a Arthur C. Clarke quote that all advanced technology to the uninitiated user looks simply like magic. Which is possibly quite pertinent here, because a lot of people are expecting things to continue as they have been, with continued advances in processing power. And whilst we've seen a round of chips with a lot of the Apple silicon, and we're looking forward to a round of ARM-based chips coming out next year, the simple reality is that we're hitting the limits with Moore's law. We're going to see some improvements, but a lot of the improvements are going to come from not faster cores, but just using simply more and more cores in parallel. And there's a limit to what we can do it. There's also a limit to what we can do with software. I mean, software at the moment is becoming incredibly bloated. There's a limit to what we can do with data, and we touched on some of that in Des's article there on hallucination. And there are various different other aspects where there are some considerable assumptions that have been made, which I think are concerning and may not live up to expectations.
Indeed. And I think the underlying all of that, as you said, AI is not magic. There's a requirement in any system for human oversight. There's a particular case that I've been playing through as a scenario where somebody scrapes Wikipedia to use it as a source of truth. But they scrape it at such a time that somebody has gone in and made malicious edits on a particular thing that's critical, maybe describing an individual of note or an incident and creating false data. The language model is trained on that. The language model believes that's real and produces an output. And that goes back to this whole thing of sort of, data poisoning, which we both touch on in each of our articles, yours talking about AI not being magic, and myself sort of talking about the whole issue of, hallucinations and what is real and not. So, there is an increasing risk in that. There's also another piece I'd like to bring to people's attention on our homepage right now, and that's by our senior contributor, Craig Mullins, a data and database expert and industry thought leader. And his is essentially in the same space, and that is that he talks about this thing called a DBA in a drum, which is essentially a bit of a pun or a play on words about something that used to be created called a janitor in a drum in North America, essentially a barrel full of all things you needed to be a janitor or a cleaner in general speak. And his overall question is artificial intelligence coming for the database administrator's job? So another great read there, without giving too much away. In essence, what he is essentially tongue-in-cheek talking about is that, the question is, can we now start to look at artificial intelligence agents or bots to start to automate some of the database administrator workload? And in part, with robotic process automation, we can. But in his story, he talks about the real detail of what it takes to be an expert in database administration, database management, and all other things, particularly security. So another great read there. And Bill, I know you've put out another piece which we'll wrap up on, which is a topic that a lot of people around the world are talking about, certainly in North America, and it relates to the TikTok social media platform and app, and specifically a ban for it. And you touched on not only whether TikTok should be banned, but then should that threat of a ban be extended to other tech giants. I'd love to get your thoughts on what you covered in that article and what people can look forward to when they go to elnion.com.
I'm a passionate campaigner for privacy, and I've been part of a team that helped take on Facebook and took them to the European High Court and got them sanctioned. And we're only too acutely aware of a lot of the malicious activity, as well as the mass surveillance that has occurred. To a great extent, what I talk about in this article is the fact that much of the mass surveillance is largely theoretical in the case of TikTok, and obviously a lot of the Americans are somewhat concerned about this with some good reason. But much of the data is held by Oracle and is beyond the reach of, let's say, the authorities in China to sort of sift through on a casual basis. Whereas it's very much a different case when it comes to all the American tech giants, where secret warrants are known to be served on a regular basis. And a lot of the protections that the Europeans have called for that would normally apply in our own jurisdictions around independent judicial oversight and the means of a right of appeal or redress simply don't exist. And you need to be realistic here. In any country, the law enforcement authorities are going to need to be able to serve warrants to access data in order for a lot of investigations to occur and in order for criminals to be caught. And it's one thing for this to be happening in your own country, where your own government, who you can vote for to replace if you don't like what they're doing. And it's totally another thing if this is being conducted by a foreign power without the sort of independent oversight or the means of redress, and you have no means of voting them out. And I would have concerns if my data was being unnecessarily abused or surveilled by either Messrs. Musk or Zuckerberg, or possibly by a future administration headed by a Mr. Trump. And I think a lot of people would share those concerns. So a lot to consider there. We'd encourage people to come and read some of those articles, and hopefully we'll be bringing some more highlights to you in the near future. Des, we've got a lot more excitement on the horizon. I'm doing a lot around transportation and looking at the cybersecurity there. Obviously, the recent incident in Baltimore has been in the news, and hopefully we'll be following up with some insights in that arena. Is there anything on the horizon that you're looking forward to?
So one of the big challenges I'm working on at the moment is in the retail space and supply chains, not just cybersecurity, but also the impact of AI. I'm also looking at what's happening between state and federal governments with the adoption of AI. One of the biggest challenges is just the overall regulation of the adoption of it and where it lays, for the very same reason that other systems have to go through some of these challenges. I know cloud computing in Australia, for example, had to go through an IRAP certification, which is a platform which all service providers had to go through for a regulatory clearance to be able to provide state and federal government cloud services. And the conversation that's being held here and across Southeast Asia, and I know Europe and the US will catch up with it, is what should we be doing with regard to regulation to AI as we do with cloud and big data and analytics and data science and ad infinitum and data centers and networks and ISPs. What should we be doing? How should it be done? So we'll have some pieces coming on that. But yes, we have got 4 great stories for folk to visit there right now on elnion.com. We would love them to go and visit them, ranging from the topic of AI hallucination. The DBA in a drum is AI coming for the database administrator's job. Your piece on whether or not AI is magic or not and setting some expectations. And a great wrap-up story with regard to the TikTok ban. We would love people to join us in social platforms with comments and other elements there, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook Business, and Twitter and so forth. Send us your big questions, and if anyone would like to join us on the panel for a conversation, we'd welcome as well. But Bill, yeah, let's keep the stories going. There's some exciting news, and as you said, there'll be other big topics coming up with transport and logistics as well with the current news in the world.
And we'll be bringing you some of the big issues and insights behind those headlines, and look forward to engaging with you soon. All the very best.